Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. And welcome back, my friends, to the final episode of this year's Secret Origins Month. Fine, you guys want another villain origin, huh? Sure, let's talk about the Punisher. Regardless of your feelings about the character, whether you enjoy the more direct murderous methods he uses over traditional heroics, or whether you find him a repulsive vigilante who should have been put away by the heroes of the Marvel Universe long ago, the character did not start as someone who would be the protagonist. Mind you, he also didn't start as someone whose skin color would be changed, become a Frankenstein monster, an avenging angel, or cosmic friggin' Ghost Rider, but superhero comics have a way of evolving, so to speak. According to Jerry Conway, his creator, the direct inspiration for the Punisher was Mac Bolan, the main character of a long series of action-adventure novels called The Executioner, wherein Mac Bolan's family all died due to mafia-related shenanigans that they had become embroiled in. Mac Bolan went on a crusade to kill the mafia from city to city. But did he do so wearing a shirt with a big skull on it? No, he did not. Point goes to the Punisher. Speaking of, according to Stan Lee, the character was originally going to be called the Assassin, and that Conway was making the character deliberately to make the jump from villain to hero. However, Lee countered to Conway that there's no way in hell you could have a hero be called the Assassin because of the connotations of the word, and suggested the Punisher name. And as I've been saying, he premiered as a Spider-Man villain, which is why he turned up again during the 90s Clone Saga, much to my confusion at the time. And that brings us to an interesting situation here. See, not only is it the first appearance of the Punisher, not only is this a Bronze Age origin, which we don't do very often, but it is also the first appearance of another major villain we've talked about before. And it's when I would say the original Spider-Man Clone Saga began. As a quick recap, the original Clone Saga, the story that the 90s one with Ben Reilly was a sequel to, happened in the 70s, when a clone of Gwen Stacy showed up on Peter's doorstep and they investigated her origins, leading to their discovery of Miles Warren as the Jackal, the clone of Spidey fighting him, and what was believed to be the death of said clone until they showed up again in the 90s Clone Saga. As a result, some would probably say that today's comic is not part of the original Clone Saga, because, well, it features no clones. The Gwen Stacy clone wouldn't show up for another 15 issues after all. However, this is also the first appearance of the Jackal. And some of you were technically correct in guessing that the Jackal's first appearance would be the thing we cover today. However, I admit my intention here is focusing on the Punisher over him. Not because it's not the first appearance of Miles Warren, he appeared briefly almost 100 issues before this on Peter's first day of college, and might as well have been unnamed entirely, but rather because I prefer Secret Origins Month focus on heroes. I care about superheroes more than villains, and they tend to have more interesting things happening to them in their first appearances than villains do. Admittedly, the Punisher is skirting the line on that. He is not really a hero, but he is considered close enough to the good guys that he technically falls in that same vein of anti-heroes that people really enjoy and root for. Unsurprisingly, while I could find plenty of material about why the Punisher was created, not just the Executioner thing, but also an uptick in crime in New York resulting in culturally popular movies like Death Wish and Dirty Harry, information on why the Jackal was created is pretty sparse. Every article or interview I could find regarding the issue is all, "The Punisher was introduced here! It was an innovation! The comic goes for hundreds of dollars if it's in mint condition! And also I guess the Jackal first appears here, but the Punisher!" That's why I'm actually rather bemused by all the comments last week expecting this to be about the Jackal. Sure, I'll talk about him some more here, but in the wider world, no one gives a crap about Captain Cloning. Let's dig into Amazing Spider-Man number 129 and see if we should care more about one versus the other. Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn.
pumping trucks, Linkara. This comic sucks, Linkara.
The cover is one of those that's been heavily referenced and homaged, and it's easy to see why. It's simple and straightforward. The Punisher looking through his scope at Spider-Man and shooting at him. Although from the looks of things, he didn't bother to actually compensate for wind, distance, or anything in his aiming, since he's just trying to kill Spidey dead on with the target, and we can see that he keeps missing. He's different! He's deadly! He's yours for the low, low price of $29.95! His assignment? Kill Spider-Man! And as you can see, he's failing at it pretty hard. And behind the most murderous plot of all times, there lurks the Jackal! Yeah, the Jackal sure sounds super impressive when the entire rest of this cover has been about how deadly and murderous the Punisher is. Truly be fearful of the guy who writes him a check! We open on the first ever of the Jackal's many, many laboratories throughout New York, where the Punisher is shooting a statue of Spider-Man that I guess the Jackal had ready for him to use as target practice. What's funny is that creating a plaster statue of Spider-Man is like the least ridiculous thing we'd ever see the Jackal do. Magnificent! You demolished the plaster statue on your first shot! Well, yeah, it's not that hard when he's like barely 10 feet away from the thing. In a hidden chamber from all prying eyes but ours, two men prepare for the death of a certain wall-crawling hero. And the first step in a master plan of evil takes ominous form. Step 1, kill Spider-Man. Step 2, make clones. You can see how all this connects together. The Punisher says he still needs the rifle adjusted a bit before he kills Spider-Man, and objects to the Jackal, saying that he must enjoy killing. I kill only those who deserve killing, Jackal, and Spider-Man deserves to die. His crotch especially deserves to die, like on this statue. While I've got the opportunity here, I don't think I've ever talked about the Jackal's appearance. Probably because when he came back in the 90s Clone Saga, it was kind of revamped further so that he was just a green dude in a black trench coat. But the original look for him is weird. For a guy called the Jackal, there's nothing particularly Jackal-like about him, aside from the ears, which is a bit of a stretch. He's a green furry dude who wears green underpants to match the fur. And he's constantly smiling, and his big pointy ears, and yeah, this really makes me wonder if the idea behind the Jackal was less to evoke the animal and more to evoke the Green Goblin. Obviously not a one-for-one match, but there is something kind of troll or goblin-esque about him. The green color and the ears and all. It just makes me think the writers regretted killing the Green Goblin off and wanted a new villain to take his place. That's speculation on my part, obviously, but otherwise the design doesn't make sense. We cut to Spidey around New York, a common occurrence in any Spider-Man comic, one that even Peter is tired of. Never thought I'd get bored with web slinging, but right now I'm so absolutely sick of it. I could chuck my web shooters down the first sewer I see. Ironically, the next issue after this one would introduce the Spidermobile. No, I'm not kidding, look it up. No, his complaints are about the air quality, probably not helped by that huge smokestack behind him billowing black smoke into the air. I wouldn't worry, Pete. Thanks to this new villain, the Jackal, I'm sure you will never have to worry about smokestacks ever again. He spots a robbery in progress and decides to deal with it while snapping photos for Jameson. Of course, if he knew Spider-Man was snapping all these crime photos for him, and not Peter Parker, old Jolly Jonah would simply explode. It's a good thing no one ever pays attention to me when I'm talking out loud to myself about this stuff, or else this would be really awkward. He deals with the crooks, who briefly believe the bad press about Spidey and assume he just wants a cut. Naturally, he just webs them up and leaves them for the cops. And judging by the way they're webbed up, I'm pretty sure they're actually all dead from the lack of air holes. Spidey knows this won't really help his reputation too much, sadly. Jameson has helped convince the world that Spider-Man murdered Norman Osborn. Harry had secretly removed the Green Goblin costume so no one knows the truth about him. And now everyone thinks he's a criminal. He knows that any attempt to clear his name by telling people Norman was the Goblin would be fruitless, since they already don't believe he's a hero, and on top of that, he thinks Harry doesn't know. Thus, the truth would shatter him. Guess there's nothing I can do. Only thing is, Is there ever? Well, there's one thing I can take comfort in. At least Gwen Stacy never slept with Norman Osborn and had twin children with him. He changes back to Peter Parker and heads to the Bugle, briefly getting invited to a Christmas party thrown by Betty Brant and Ned Leeds. I'll check my fabulously crowded social register, Betty, but I'd say it's a safe bet I might make it. Ha 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 ha! This episode is being released in the year 2020. Ha 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 ha! He heads into Jameson's office to sell the photos, but Jameson doesn't want them. Don't mention that costume freak in my presence, Parker! And don't give me this nonsense about robberies! I want news photos, Parker! Photos about news! I mean, I guess I could take photos of Spider-Man punching a printing press. See, now you're speaking my language, Parker! No, the big news is the Punisher, as shown by a rival paper's story on him. Punisher starts war against mob! With 2 exclamation points. Because it's exciting, but not too exciting. The Punisher, I heard about him. You heard about him! That's good, Parker! But I was actually talking about the article under it, New Petitions Against Tax. He's only the most newsworthy thing to happen in New York since Boss Tweed! Well, screw you, New England hurricane of 1938, Mad Bomber George Peter Metesky, and the B-25 bomber that crashed into the Empire State Building in 1945. Jameson orders him to go and get pictures of the Punisher, but accepts the photos of the robbery because, hey, Peter's on salary anyway, and he can reduce it by claiming the developing costs come out of said salary. 'Cause he's a colossal douchebag. A short while later, I guess he decided he likes web-slinging again, and is making his way across the city as he tries to figure out a way to find the Punisher. He's not gonna be advertising himself, and his spider sense goes off, alerting him of the Punisher shooting at him with the concussion rifle. Hello, I'm advertising this gun! Fortunately, the gun didn't hit any civilians, instead hitting the abandoned buildings district like in Power Rangers. Not kidding, Peter describes it as an abandoned tenement building. And he figures out where the shot came from. He chases after the Punisher as he flees. Spidey thinks he's trying to escape down an air shaft, but he's actually grabbing another gun from it. Your kind of scum has ruled this country too long, punk! Punk is nothing but death! And crime, and the rage of a beast! Surprisingly, the gun doesn't shoot bullets, but some kind of titanium alloy wire that wraps around Spidey. You're all alike, using whatever means to get control of the public. Drugs, gambling, loan shark operations, Comcast upselling. Some of it legitimate, but all of it evil. Sometimes I wonder if that evil's rubbed off on me. Then I realize that it's someone's intestines and I just need a towel. He gets ready to shoot him with a pistol, but Spidey manages to snap the wires, to the Punisher's shock. That wire was strong enough to hold 10 men! You can't! And Spidey punches him into a chimney. I've got a secret to tell you, pal. I've got nothing on under here! Not even a dance belt! I'm not 10 men! I'm your friendly neighborhood... forget it. I mean, given the bricks that are coming out of that wall from your impact, I'm pretty sure I fractured your skull with that hit. Apparently that wire gun wasn't the only thing hiding in the air shaft. The Jackal has just been sitting inside of it this whole time. How long has he been in there? Hell, how did they even know Spidey was coming this way? Have they just been sitting there for hours with the Jackal deciding, oh dude, I'm gonna hide in here and yell boo when you get him here, it'll be awesome! Worried that the Punisher will tell Spidey about him if he's captured, the Jackal emerges and slashes at the back of Spidey's head. Ha! The Jackal's claws dig deep, wall crawler! And my negatively charged electroprods can also prove quite stimulating!
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Spidey staggers towards the edge of the building, to the Punisher's horror. He's headed towards the edge! I won't have him die this way, Jackal! It isn't just! Dude regularly guns down and tortures people for information, and then tries to kill them anyway, but falling off a roof, and suddenly he's all, my way's not very sportsmanlike. He falls off, but he's able to block out the pain enough to swing away and crash through a window into, I don't know, an office? The image shows only women and a phone, with the narration mentioning specifically only women afterwards. So is this, like, the headquarters of a phone sex hotline or something? What the hell? By the time our hero's extricated himself from the maw of female hysteria, 1970s casual sexism. Anyway, he returns to the roof, and of course, the Punisher and Jackal are long gone, though carelessly they've left behind the gun that shot the titanium wire, which has a plaque on it for the manufacturer. Later, he returns to his apartment. Johnny Storm said he'd have the Spidermobile ready today. See issues number 126, 127, and 128. Oh my god! I never even realized that the Spidermobile thing was a storyline! So, like, 4 issues after Gwen Stacy's death and Norman Osborn being killed, we get a multi-issue subplot about Spider-Man getting a personalized car! He's excited not for the car itself, but because Corona Motors promised to pay cash so that the car could be used as a sponsorship thing. Kind of helpful since he's sharing an apartment with Harry Osborn, who's 3 months overdue on rent. As he starts sewing up the damage to his mask, we see that Harry Osborn is outside the apartment and is having paranoid delusions. Yeah, it's complicated, but Harry was kind of having a nervous breakdown and started thinking he himself was the Green Goblin and not his dad. But now he's paranoid and doesn't want to see Peter because he thinks Peter knows about him being the Goblin and slips away. Oh yeah, it's not just Peter Parker and Ben Reilly. Everybody in Spider-Man comics could use some therapy. We cut over to the campus of Empire State University, where Mary Jane Watson is talking to Professor Miles Warren. Apparently, Peter had gotten into a misunderstanding with this totally innocent, not a supervillain at all college professor a couple issues ago, and he just wants to apologize to Peter, but can't find him. And very quickly after that, we cut to the Punisher backhanding the Jackal away. Man, either Warren already had a clone of himself running around doing stuff, or it makes you wonder how much time actually passed between scenes here, because the dialogue seems to indicate this is right after they fled the roof. The Punisher is pissed because he will not be a common murderer by allowing a man to fall to his death. Yes, a common murderer who lets people just fall off roofs. As opposed to you, the just and honorable uncommon killer, who uses guns. The Jackal realizes that the Punisher's usefulness to him is over and plans to get into other ventures now that Spidey's dead. The Punisher leaves to go replace the wire gun that he lost, and ends up running into Spidey investigating the armorer where the gun was manufactured. Realizing he's got a chance to kill him properly, he heads in, though Spidey, meanwhile, has discovered that the owner of the place, named Reese, is dead on the ground. The Punisher attacks, thinking that Spidey has killed Reese, who was apparently a friend of his. Spidey tries to point out the marks on the guy's neck, but the Punisher's not listening. I've heard that kind of line before, masked man. From men who'd kill their own mothers for the price of a fix. Every druggie I've murdered told me to look at the marks on a guy's neck, and I never believed them either. Spidey eventually manages to knock him down and tells him again to look at the marks. Indeed, they're claw marks, the same kind left on Spider-Man when the Jackal slashed at his head. Spidey also points out that the gun he recovered had the armorer's plate on it, something that the Punisher wouldn't so carelessly leave on, so it was evidence left for the police to find. To incriminate you, of course. He knew you had to come back here tonight, so he planted evidence the cops would have found if I hadn't. Then, to tie it up neatly, he killed the old man so you'd be found with him. Okay, but why did he assume that the cops would just come to a random-ass rooftop to find the gun? It took some time for Peter to get back to that rooftop, and there was no indication the cops were there or on their way. All that happened was a single gunshot from a concussion rifle. He was gone for a while this evening. An hour ago. Oh my god, the Jackal's cheating on me! The whole thing was to get rid of the Punisher after he dealt with Spider-Man, since Spidey is innocent of murder. After the Punisher breaks his hand on a wall he punches in anger over being used, Spidey asks what his deal is and why he's trying to kill criminals here. He doesn't answer, needing to save that for a solo series or something. He walks into an alley. But right now, I'm just a warrior. Fighting a lonely war. Man, I really thought the Jackal and I had something. I'll never love again. Spidey hears police sirens, no doubt the murderer being tipped off by the Jackal, and unfortunately, the cops only spot him, so Spider-Man realizes this murder will be pinned on him too. And so our comic ends with him swinging away while the Jackal watches from another rooftop, swearing to take over New York City and destroy him. You'll learn more of the mysterious Jackal's plans next issue. Chances are they won't have anything to do with replacing the human race with clones for some reason. This comic is overall pretty good. Not great, but good. A minor thing to note is that it's remarkably short, only 19 pages of story. I wonder if my scans are missing pages or a backup story or something, but it's just so odd. Traditionally, a story is around 22 to 24 pages, with the last couple decades in comics seeing that reduced to 20. Maybe I'm just stupid and this was the correct amount of pages in comics at the time, but it just feels weird to me. But yeah, as an issue of Amazing Spider-Man, it's perfectly fine. It starts off a new arc with the introduction of the Jackal, lays hints for the future with the reminder that Miles Warren is around, advances some of the subplots going on, and serves as an okay introduction to two characters who will have major significance, the Punisher and the Jackal. The Punisher would make a few more appearances later on, both with Spidey and other characters, but the Jackal would be the main antagonist until the end of the original Clone Saga. However, in terms of critiques, my main complaint is indeed the villains, because we're not really given anything about them other than the Jackal is a douche and the Punisher thinks he's a good guy because he only kills bad guys. Obviously, they wanted to explore the character more down the road, and they did, with the Jackal in particular getting more explanation as a big bad later. But with all the focus on the Punisher, you'd think we'd get more hints to his backstory. All we really get is he used to be a Marine, and that he has questionable judgment when it comes to how his enemies die. But that's not anything bad enough to really detract from the story, just that it feels like it's more about setup than giving the big details people would be interested in. Next time, as I said a few weeks ago, the pilot for Late Night Double Feature has been pushed back due to how busy things were in September and October, so no Atop the Fourth Wall next week. Check out the new show and see if it's something you want more of. Otherwise, we'll be back in 2 weeks with the start of the holiday season. The most lethal hired assassin ever! His assignment, kill Spider-Man! Oh, I get it now. If Spidey dies from an accident, he doesn't get paid! Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!